Could things get worse for Bitcoin? Would a 25% drop turn into an 80% drop, for example? And would that happen from our current price? If we're looking at, this just puts it into perspective. A 37% drop puts us down to 16K. But if we're going to see something way bigger, 70, 80%, is that going to send us down to price levels like $6,000? Every bear market, Bitcoin is facing some massive threat, which is just going to completely kill the space. And this time, believe it or not, it is Binance collapsing. So look, the last time that we actually dealt with something like this, you already know what happened. If we go back to November of last year, we saw FTX collapsing right here, and it triggered a very big drop in the market. I mean, from basically the time that this all kind of kicked off to the low, it took literally only a matter of a few days for Bitcoin to lose a quarter of its value. And, it really begs the question, if Binance is in similar trouble. Now, if all of this stuff starts going south for Binance, and again, we're just staying on worst case scenarios, I don't even think this is going to happen. Here is a look at some of the biggest crypto addresses in existence, and this is actually ranked. So the first biggest address in crypto holds 250,000 Bitcoin, which are worth $6.5 billion. And that's actually a 1.28% supply of the total Bitcoin coins that have ever been or will ever been made, as far as I'm aware. I might be wrong on that, but it's basically the same number. 1.28% of all Bitcoins just held by this one address. And, if we look at this and really kind of zoom in to see what we're actually looking at here, I don't know, can you guys actually see this? Yeah, you can. Not every, but like a lot of these wallets are owned by, here's Bitfinex, this is number 2, but then we've got Binance, and then we've got Binance, and, then we've got Binance and Binance. There is a lot, there are a lot of these addresses that belong to Binance, and these are just the ones that we know about, so, and this is only the top 19. We can go further down. There's, here's another Binance, there's a lot, here's another Binance. They own a lot of Bitcoin. And one of the things that you have to do when you're in trouble, like the way FTX was in trouble, is you have to sell your assets to, to cover, positions, to pay back debts, or whatever the case may be. If it did come to that, there are a lot of Bitcoins that would be dumped on the market. In fact, the data I've got here tells me that it's around 400,000 Bitcoins in total. Now, that may or may not be right. I don't know. But if the number is anywhere close to that, plus minus 100,000 Bitcoin or whatever the case may be, that is still a lot of selling pressure that could end up hitting the market. We wouldn't know what would happen. Would the coins have to be liquidated? Would they be distributed to users? It's probably not going to happen that way, let's be honest. The users are usually the ones that get fucked the most, which is why it's so important that you take custody of your funds, which is why it's so important that no matter what you want to trade or what you want to do, that you don't keep your capital on exchanges. Generally, in my experience, exchange tokens just aren't the smartest things to hold. It's just too much of a liability. You're really only making the exchange owner rich anyway, and it's just never been the kind of investment strategy that I would take. If it's you, then good for you. Do whatever you like. I'm not here to convince you otherwise. But I am telling you how I feel about this kind of thing, and I've never really liked it. And it's in a weak position right now. That much is very, very clear just by looking at this chart. There is nothing left, for Binance until a massively catastrophic drop could come in here. So that's an important part of this. You've got to keep in mind that, the exchange token could certainly collapse. If Binance actually is trouble, if Binance actually pulls an FTX and just absolutely just collapses, it's FTX was, a pretty good representation of what might have happened. Is it just a case of, well, FTX was half the size, so we double the impact for Binance? It might be. I don't have the answers here, but these are a lot of interesting questions, and I feel like I've got, a fair bit of an idea of what might actually end up happening. So, these are really, really interesting things to be asking right here. If the volume is like this now, but the volume was, only half at FTX's peak, we are still looking at something very representative, potentially, of what might actually end up happening now. Think could end up happening is if these things do actually kind of materialize and shit gets really, really bad. Here's one potential outline scenario. It's that Bitcoin could end up dropping down by about 60%, and what we're looking at, in that case would be basically something that's quite similar to the COVID crash, which would be this chart right here, this was March of 2020, we had a 60% drop within 5 days. That's quite similar, obviously, to what happened after FTX. This is the FTX crash. This is 26% in 2 days. COVID crash was 60% in 5 days. It was absolutely heinous. It was horrible. And if we saw Binance collapse, I think we could be seeing something similar to that, and that would put us down at the $10,000 range. Definitely plausible. Still not something that I think is going to happen. I just don't think Binance is going to collapse. And I'm saying this very confidently to you guys on camera. Like, I don't have a problem saying that publicly. I just don't think it's going to happen. But if it did, a 60% drop, and it would also mean that we're basically going to get nuked into a crypto nuclear winter. This entire range is going to be one massive, disgusting, bearish rising channel, rising wedge, whatever you want to call it, where the price just basically fights the trend for a little bit and then continues trending down. Is this actually going to happen? Is this just another instance of people losing their minds because they're being way too emotional? They're getting way too caught up in FUD. It's like the kind of Bitfinex things that we were seeing way back. If you don't even know what that means, fucking strap yourself in, get your seatbelt on, because you're in for a ride in this video. Or are we actually looking at some real substantial claims here? Are we actually looking at a situation where you better pay attention, you better sit up straight and really keep your ears open for what's going on right now? Because if you don't, you might catch yourself on the bad end of an FTX bubble collapse affecting the entire crypto space, maybe even contagion effect, right? One of the big concerns with FTX way back last year when it collapsed, almost actually about 10 months ago now, 11 months ago. One of the big concerns and one of the big issues that happened after FTX collapsed was that so many other things collapsed as a result of FTX. People that FTX owed money to, they were too deep in that hole, basically. They couldn't get the money that they were owed because FTX collapsed, so they collapsed as well. Are we going to see something like that? We know that when FTX collapsed, it sent shockwaves throughout the industry. And most importantly, the most noticeable thing that happened after FTX collapsed was that people became fucking scared, and that fear, you can make a strong case, and I would agree that fear has continued to exist in the market up to this day. There are still people that are scared, primarily because of the events surrounding FTX's collapse. Why are governments being so annoying around the crypto space right now? It's because of shit like FTX's collapse. You don't get such negative attention from regulators if the industry doesn't keep continuously fucking itself and imploding, every few months or every few years. You go from Mt. Gox to Bitfinex to FTX and so on and so forth. And we're going to cover a lot of them. Like I said, strap yourself in, because we're actually, what I'm more interested in than all of this stuff, and we are going to stay on the charts. You are going to be continuing to have this conversation with me. But what I'm interested in more than all of this stuff is how has this played out in the past? Because like I said, if you have been around in this space as long as I have, this is now my 6th year in the crypto space. I have aged 20 years. I was 15 years old when I entered the space, and now I'm 35 after 6 years. Looking at that and looking at the kind of things that happened before I entered the space, before 2017, I really want to break down with you guys when people felt the way they feel about Binance today, when situations were developing in. Nothing's been similar, but when there were, when history was rhyming, what happened? We're going to be looking at that too from a real data perspective. Like I said, very much in line with every YouTube video we make, but we're mixing a lot more fundamental analysis into it, which is something that we very rarely do. Again, if you appreciate that, if you're finding this entertaining so far, do me a favor and smash up those likes buttons. And also just tell me what you're thinking so far in the comment section down below. This is a discussion. Like I said, I want to know what you're thinking. I'm going to be down there in the comment section, chilling with you guys, talking to you guys and seeing what's up. So very curious to hear what you have to say.